Good thing my head wasn't down there. In order to check to make sure that the transmission is working properly, the release bearing, I'm going to mount the engine and the transmission together as a unit, put it on the hoist, move it over to the other side of the car, plug the hydraulic line into the clutch slave cylinder, master cylinder, see whether or not the slave cylinder actually releases the clutch, and I can make sure that it's working. This is a lot of work just to make sure that that is in fact done properly, but if I put the whole thing back in the car and it doesn't work, I got to pull the whole thing back out again. So I guess it's worth the effort. This is how I eventually ended up running the lines to the concentric slave cylinder. Okay. Let's see if this is all going to work. Well, that came out. So now I have a little bit of a dance to do. I have to back the Lotus out, slide the engine and the crane over to the other side so I can access the clutch line, which is coming out of the other side of the car, or at least it's coming out of this side of the frame. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of a dance here. Nothing works the first time. Tighten off the bleed nipple. So I have to go into a gear, probably fourth, make it a little easier on my fingers. Press the clutch and then turn the output shaft. It doesn't appear to work. I think I solved the problem. The input shaft was too long and I haven't done anything to this transmission, so it just bottomed out when I tried to assemble it. So I've trimmed it several times now, twice, and we're going to try and reassemble it again here. Clutch in. It's not spinning. Still not spinning. There, that sounds like a clutch. There we go. I can hear it spinning, so we have success. I'm going to try and see if I can get the entire engine, transmission, and drive shaft in one fell swoop. I haven't got a bolt or wrench big enough to take the drain plug or the filler plug off the side, so I'm going to fill the transmission from the top. But I put this 2x4 across so that I don't damage any of the front suspension. I've lined the transmission tunnel with some newspaper to keep it from gouging the bottom of the floor when the drive shaft slides down there. I'm going to slide the drive shaft in position now. I don't know if this thing's going to go or not. I don't feel like filling the transmission until I get a little further down. I'd hate to think that I'm going to have to take the oil pan off, but it looks like that might be the case. Well, in the first attempt, the speedometer drive popped off. I know what I have to take off. There's that big frickin' block on the back of the transmission, and it's causing all sorts of trouble. So it's out of here. In the true spirit of Colin Chapman, if it didn't really add anything other than weight, then what in the world is it doing on the car in the first place? This is pretty heavy. Okay, let's try it again. Oh. Damn, that clicking you hear is the transmission mount dropping into a hole in the transmission tunnel, but not the proper hole. Okay, that's the proper sound. Okay, it's in. I still have to put the motor mounts on it. It may be positioned a little too far back right now. I have to get things lined up. And it's going to be a bugger to get that cover back on the top of the transmission, but I guess that's the only thing I have to do that's going to be a bit of a pain. Well, actually, it's probably just one of the many things that I have to do that's going to be a pain. Well, that's a nice shot. I'm going to have to pull this out again to get that stupid speedometer on. Okay, it's in. Hopefully it won't pop off while I lower the engine back in again. It popped off. Okay, that doesn't sound good. Yep, that's the sound of it popping down through that plate again. That would be that sound again. Excuse me. What can I put underneath there? I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I guess that's all it took, was getting mad. Speedometer pulled out again. Okay, using a mirror and a funny other little tool, something like this, I was able to push the circlip back in a little bit. So I don't think it's going to come out. What do I need a speedometer for anyway? Just so I don't have any problems, I better install this drive shaft. Okay, it's resting on the motor mounts. The bottom pins are not in position yet. It was a struggle to get the motor mounts on, but it appears to be in position. Now I got to wrestle with the moving it around at the bottom to get the pins into the frame. Okay, it's in. Now I can get this strap off of it, break down the engine stand, pack it up, and hope I never ever have to use it again. I still have to put that top cover on, fill the tranny. Lots and lots of stuff, but it's back in, and it appears that everything is sort of going to fit. I still have lots of unknowns further along the path, but it's making good progress, although it's awfully frustrating progress. There's still lots of stuff that has to be added to this engine, but now is the perfect time before you actually do put more stuff on to tighten up these suspension bolts that I left loosened, so that now with the weight of the engine in place, it can actually settle and I can lock them off at the right setting. Okay, that should make sure that the wheels don't fall off. I still have the steering rack to put on, but I can't put that on until I put the radiator in at the same time. I've still got the fan for the front of the engine, the pulleys, and all the other stuff. So, but at least I actually found that I had left one nut off of one of the suspension pieces on the other side, so it is good to double check things. There still is no exhaust port in the side of this body, because up until now I haven't had any way of marking it and checking it. So I'm going to place the downpipe in here. Okay, that's fairly secure, and as you can see, there's no exit. So I'm going to do a little math and a little bit of marking and see what I can come up with as far as a pilot hole. I've been doing some checking now that the engine's in. It's a good time to test to see if this nose piece and all the other fiberglass panels are going to fit properly. Turns out that I was right. I'm going to try and get this nose piece rebuilt to accommodate the fact that the Webers are not on anymore. I've also mocked up the engine a little bit and put the scuttle box in place to see whether or not there's any problems with clearance along the front, and I've marked it. The fenders are just sitting here. It looks kind of neat with them this low, but they're never going to be that low. But I have noticed that over the years, the line seems to have bent slightly. So I'm going to see if I can get that straightened out at the body shop. So I'm going to load these into the back of the car and take them off and have an estimate done. So I think I've changed all of the brake lines that I need to change. I've added some nice braided ones on the front to dress it up, and there was one that was leaking on this side. So I think I'm ready to finally bleed the brakes. So here is how you bleed a British brake system. First, we're going to top up the master cylinder. You can overfill it a little bit because it's going to go down. Starting with the shortest line, loosen the bleed nipple at that particular caliper. Fasten a piece of hose over the bleed nipple and then slowly pump the brakes until all the air bubbles are removed. if possible, while the pedal is being held, tighten up the bleed nipple. Watch out for any painted surfaces when you take the tube off. Clean off the nipple and replace the cap and proceed to the next line. Pop up the line and proceed to the back. In this case, there's only one bleed nipple left at the back on one of the brake drums. Top up the system for the last time and replace the cap, and you should be good. With a nice firm pedal. I think I've put up long enough with the pigeon-toed nature of the front of this vehicle. Now that the engine's in place and the brake lines are attached, I can actually add the steering box, the steering rack, and the radiator, but they both have to be installed at exactly the same time. Let's see if we can get this rad inserted. Now I'm going to see if I can slip these back down. As you can see, if I can get my finger in there, there's not a lot of clearance between the radiator and these mounts. I put rubber isolators in between the radiator and these in the past. We'll see whether or not I need them with this reincarnation. 4 nuts, 4 washers. We'll hold it in place for now until I can get a chance to get a socket on the top. I don't know if I want to tighten them up completely until I get the steering column in place to make sure that the angle is correct. Now all I have to do is just add the tie rod end into the hole, add the nut, and tighten it. And as I suspected, I can't get the socket in because there's a wheel on. So I'm going to have to raise this side, take the wheel off, and then tighten this tie rod end. 26 to 28 pounds is what these tie rod ends get torqued to. Now, because the dial for the torque wrench is going to be upside down, I'm just going to have to estimate how much the needle deflects. Should be, well, probably about there. There are no real radiator hoses for this particular engine configuration, so I'm going to have to make up something out of bits and pieces. I could use a universal hose, which I've done in the past, but I think this might be a little bit more reliable. Lots of cutting, fussing, and pushing hoses around, but this seems to be the best configuration. I've got one old hose here. I'm going to trim it off and insert an adapter to join those 2 pieces together. And I have to resort to using this can. There is a drain plug, or at least a filler, on the top that I can add fluid, because this is going to fit in here. I'm going to cut the line and insert that. It'll be down below the hood line, and because it's below the maximum height of this, I'll have to fill the coolant over here. This will still be the blowout. This is the old bottom rad hose. It's a universal hose with a spring inside it. It has to make several bends and turns in order to fit the configuration that I need. I went looking for one of these at one place and they said they don't make them anymore. And I was shocked. What am I going to do? I'm going to be cutting little bits and pieces of hose to make up something that bends around the corner. So I checked another place, and lo and behold, they make universal rad hoses. This one's made in Venezuela, so they obviously know the necessities of being able to keep an old car on the road. The lower rad hose is going to require a little bit of contortion to get it in. The pipe is right about here. One thing I discovered since putting the radiator in is that this fan that I had used previously doesn't appear to fit anymore. It fits here, but it's not far enough up. And the sway bar is in the way. And I did some measurements on the old frame, and I discovered that these brackets are further down on this frame, right, Molly, than on the old one. So the whole front end of that old frame had been fabricated from scratch to rough measurements, and these are the exact measurements. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this fan. I have to figure out some way of attaching it. I didn't get the folks in England to build me some brackets to attach any kind of fan to the front. So it would require drilling maybe, not welding, maybe clamping. But I think first off is I need the oil cooler. So I'm going to attach the oil cooler to the front and then find out how much clearance I have left. Just have to tighten up a couple of these other ones at the top, but that was roughly the position it was in before. It will move if I push it, but I don't want to push it. I should get an open end wrench and tighten these up a little more. Then I can zip the bottom half of those bolts off. I've been holding off on installing the plenum box. I've had paper stuffed in here to keep stuff out. I was going to go back with the Weber isolating mounts, but I can't find them. So I had these spacers made up. Cost me $100 to get them made up. And for some reason, I gave the guy a sample. I gave him a Weber aluminum spacer, and he made these out of steel. So I painted them blue so that they don't rust. And I've used them as a bit of a die cutter to cut 4 gaskets to go on before them, and then 4 more to go on after them. So I had such a horrible time disconnecting this one bottom bolt on the turbo when I tried to remove it. I figured it was better to put this whole thing together as a unit. I've also added a new hose for the drain, and we'll see whether or not I can fish this mess into the frame. I'll just slip this whole thing up the plenum box. Maybe I should have kept the plenum box off until I got this in position. I never engineer anything, I just sort of do it all freestyle. A nut up under here just to hold this thing. Let's just take the turbo off and out of the way. I don't really know what these things should be torqued to because it's all been fabricated after. Okay, I'm going to tighten down the clamp until the turbo starts to spin. Right there, that's the turbo drain, and that is the, where is it? That's the line coming out of the transmission for the clutch slave cylinder. So I'm going to have to try and sort of push the line on bend this hose out of the way and then bend it all back into place and hope nothing gets too badly kinked. Things are rolling around all over the place. Okay, we'll slide this on, feed it through. Suffice it to say that it's going onto the sump. You can't actually see it, but trust me, while I'm in the same area, it seems logical to attach this ugly metal plate that's used to keep the generator hanging upside down, because this is a left-hand drive vehicle and the steering shaft goes right through on this side. I thought of replacing this with an alternator, and I might do that at some point in the future, but for now I've got too much invested in it. I've had to notch the mount and cut down the rotor in order to clear the steering column, and I'm not too sure whether or not I would have to do the same thing on an alternator as well. Well, after a lot of struggling, this fan belt is too short by about an inch. Yes, it is. So it's back to the shop, except that I've thrown out the packaging for it, and I could always use it to hang a cat. Good night. Is it the right size for you? Do you want to jump through a hoop? No? Okay.